Welcome back to our series on building truly enterprise-ready tests. Today, we're jumping into a really critical piece of the puzzle, dynamic environment handling. We're going to make our tests so portable they can run anywhere, on your machine, my machine, in any CI pipeline, all without changing a single line of code. Let's dive right in.
All right, so just a quick refresher. In part 3, we got Spring and Cucumber talking to each other, which was a huge step. This means our tests can now use the power of the Spring context to manage all our components. But that awesome setup also accidentally created a new, hidden problem for us.
And that leads us to the big question, right? Everything works great on our local machines hitting localhost, but what happens the moment we push this to a CI pipeline that needs to test against, say, a staging or even a production environment? Well, our localhost URL is going to be totally useless there.
And that, right there, is the core problem we're solving today, the dreaded hard-coded URL. It's a mistake we've probably all made at some point, but it's one that can seriously bring your whole automation project to a grinding halt.
Let's be super clear about this. Hard-coding URLs is a major anti-pattern. It means every single time you want to run your tests against a different environment, you'd have to go in and manually change the code. It makes your tests incredibly brittle, and it's pretty much guaranteed to break your CI/CD pipelines.
So how do we fix this? We're going to do it the right way, by externalizing our configuration. This just means removing those environment-specific values, like URLs, out of our Java code and into simple configuration files where they really belong.
Okay, so our very first step is to create a properties file inside our test resources. See how we're calling it application-dev.properties? That -dev part at the end is a super important Spring convention. It tells Spring, hey, this file is for the dev profile, which is what we use for local development. And inside, it's dead simple, just one key base URL, pointing to our localhost API.
Great. Now we need a way to actually read that property in our code. And that's where this little environment manager class comes in. We mark it with add component so Spring knows to manage it for us. But the real magic is this @value annotation. This is basically us telling Spring, go find the property called base.url in whichever properties file is active, and just inject its value right into this base URL variable for me. It's that easy.
So you might be thinking, why bother with all this? Well, the payoff is huge. First, we now have one central place for all of our environment values. No more hunting through code. Second, it makes switching between environments for CI/CD unbelievably easy. And finally, it means we have zero duplication of these URLs across our entire test suite, which makes everything so much easier to maintain.
Having the config files is one half of the solution. But now we need a smart way to automatically tell Spring which config file to use at runtime. This is where automated profile selection comes into play.
And here it is, the brain of our whole operation, the nResolver class. This class implements a special Spring interface called Active Profiles Resolver. Its one and only job is to figure out which profile to use before a test even starts. And the logic inside its resolve method is simple. It just looks for a system property called spring.profiles.active.
And this is a really important distinction to understand. The @value annotation we used earlier, that reads from our application properties files, which are managed by Spring. But system.getProperty, on the other hand, reads properties that are passed directly to the Java virtual machine when the program starts, usually from the command line. They work together as a team. System.getProperty tells us which profile we want, and then @value goes and reads the right values from that profile's file.
So, what if that system property isn't set? This is maybe the most crucial part for making this easy for your team. Our code checks if that property is missing, and if it is, we just default to dev. This is so important. It means any developer can clone the project, hit run in their IDE, and the tests will just work automatically using the application-dev.properties file with absolutely zero extra setup required.
All right, let's zoom out and connect all these pieces to the bigger picture. How does this setup actually empower our whole DevOps workflow? This is where we see the real payoff for our work.
So, picture this workflow. A developer pushes their code. That automatically triggers our CI pipeline, maybe in Jenkins or GitHub Actions. The build command runs, but with one tiny extra argument, -g spring.profiles.active equals prod. Our nResolver immediately sees this, tells Spring to use the prod profile, and the tests automatically run against the production URL defined in an application-prod.properties file. And the best part? The developer changed nothing. Zero code changes. It's seamless.
Okay, so we've built this incredibly solid foundation for running our tests anywhere, against any environment. So, what's next? Well, now that we can get the correct base URL dynamically, it's time to actually start making some API calls by building clean, reusable clients.
So in part 5, we're going to get our hands dirty building that client layer. We'll create some slick, reusable RestAssured clients. We'll also build clean, typed request payloads so we can stop using messy maps and strings. And most importantly, we're going to completely remove all that raw REST logic from our step definitions so they can focus purely on business behavior.
So the question I want to leave you with is this: how can we take our API interactions to the next level? How do we make them even cleaner, safer, and more reusable across our entire test suite? That's exactly what we're going to solve in the next explainer. For the full code snippets and the complete step-by-step guide, be sure to check the Medium article link in the video description below.